Hello, everyone. This session is about COVID and the future Korea. So actually, we had two moderators, and also I'm currently supporting the site at this site as the site moderator. So why don't you start from Dr. Youbean Kim, and we will start our session from now on. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is a special session, COVID-19 and future Korea. This session composed of 6 articles published in the special issue of AJIP. Titles and authors of the 6 articles are shown in article information of AJIP website or by Googling. Also, this session is being broadcast worldwide by YouTube. As mentioned before, we have 6 articles in this session, and I would like to introduce the title of the articles. First one is Lessons from Korea's Response to COVID-19, Missing Factors of Sector Innovation System. The author is Sung-Soo from Hannam University. Second one is forecasting the environmental change of technological innovation system in South Korea in the COVID-19 era. The author is Youbean Kim from National Assembly Futures Institute. And third one is forecasting Korean national innovation system and science and technology policy after the COVID-19. The author is Seongwon Park from Hanbad National University. Fourth one is the strategic transformation from innovation cluster to digital innovation cluster during and after COVID-19. The author is Dok-Sun Im from STEPI. Fifth one is COVID-19 and the Korean economy, when, how, and what changes. The author is Changkeun Park from Seoul National University. And last one is technological innovation in public education in the era of COVID-19, focusing on distance education policy in South Korea. The author is Hyejin Shin from Eureka, Korea. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Youbean Kim, the National Assembly Futures Institute, Korea. Another moderator is Professor Avvari Mohan at University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Site moderator Dr. JiYoung Park is also presented in the Jeju site. Please note that most of the article authors are being attended in the Jeju conference site. In addition, 2 experts of this discussant have been invited: Dr. Sungwon Park at the National Assembly Futures Institute and Jung at Seoul Educational Policy Institute of Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education. This session will be cooperated with 3 moderators. Professor Mohan, can you introduce yourself and proceed this session?
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, it's a privilege, and thank you for having me here. This seems to be the most crowded and popular session. My name is Avvari Mohan. I'm the Research Director and Associate Professor for Strategy and Innovation at the Nottingham University Business School. I've had the pleasure of being associated with Asian Society of Innovation and Policy, along with Professor Seol, for quite some time now. My area of interest for research is innovation systems, but in the past 2 years, I've moved on from science parks, and I'm looking at linkages businesses make with non-government organizations for their innovation. Presently, we are studying the role of NGOs in moderating innovation among business organizations in the post-COVID-19 situation. Once again, pleasure and privilege to be here, and looking forward to the wonderful presentations. A special hello to Professor Seol, whom I can see in the audience. I now pass it back to Dr. Kim.
All right. Thank you, Professor Mohan. Here, I would like to introduce the participants attended the conference, the site. From my left side, Professor Sung Park attended. Very good. Yeah.
Sorry,
Right hand.
Professor Park, we're not
Yeah,
able to hear you.
Right hand. Okay, that's good. And also Dr. Changkeun Park attended. And also Professor Sung-Soo Seol attended. Thank you. And Miss Trine Vangsbo attended. And also Dr. Hyejin Shin attended. And also Dr.Song Jung attended. Thank you so much. And also in the online participants also observed there. Professor Avvari Mohan, as you saw, attended from Malaysia, and also Dr. Youbean Kim attended, and also Sungwon Park attended from the National Assembly Future Institute. So can you proceed more, the Dr. Mohan?
Sorry, Professor Dr. Park. We can hear the voice of the site. Please more loudly.
Okay, sorry. So Professor Mohan, why don't you continue to our session?
Right. We're going to welcome all the participants to present their articles and discuss the topics. But we would like to also inform that myself or other moderators may request some of the authors to promote some of the discussion of the session. As we all know, we are experiencing quite severely the new normal situation, or the situation changing completely stemming from the COVID-19. We have the 6 papers that are dealing with the various topics regarding the new normal, from an innovation systems and policy and such impacts. So we request each author to briefly present each of their papers, as in look at your abstracts and the key findings, and then Professor Park will take on from the discussion part. Over to you, Professor Park.
Yes. Also, what I wanted to address another point is that our videos also uploaded at the ASIP webpage. So if you just want to see our recorded videos, that would be great to help understand about the papers too. So starting from the Seongwon Park, Professor Park, can you summarize your findings?
Hello everyone, my name is Professor Sung Park at Hanban National University. I will present about the focus in Korean national innovation system and science and technology policy after COVID-19. I worked with Professor Sungwon at Hanban National University. The COVID-19 is a pandemic that affects all phases of our life and will change many patterns in science, technology, and innovation. A qualitative study was conducted using focus group involving 10 industry, academic, research experts with the objective of identifying changes in Korea's national innovation system and science technology policy after COVID-19. 8 questions were designed based on the major components of the national innovation system, such as companies, universities, and research institutes, to discuss the changes in the national innovation system and science technology policy, and also keyword analysis and cluster analysis were performed using the vector analysis and program Postbio and the knowledge matrix process. It is predicted that in the wake of the COVID-19, Korea's national innovation system will shift to a new paradigm that is more decentralized, responsive, and autonomous. Furthermore, several policy agendas that can turn these changes into positive momentum of change in science and technology policy are presented. So we summarize as a result, the COVID-19 is a crisis and an opportunity to promote new technology innovation. So policy experts should utilize it as positive momentum for change by supporting R&D system and technology policies that promote technical innovation. So, thank you, thank you.
So another paper actually presented by Professor Sung-Soo Sung.
Good afternoon, everybody. My paper is focused on the why Korea is leading the diagnosis kit of the coronavirus, and also why Korea has a prominent role in medicines and vaccines for coronavirus. Generally, Korea is assessed to be 1 or 2 steps behind the advanced countries. But in diagnosis kit or antibody drugs or vaccines, Corona has some roles in the world. So I'd like to find out what factor is the major role to improve the Korean response to coronavirus. Simply speaking, diagnosis kit. In diagnosis kit, Korea is the first in the world. In antibody drugs, Eli Lilly is the first, and just after Eli Lilly, Korean company Seol is the second. And Seol will produce the antibody drug maybe next month. Also, there are some candidates of vaccine for coronavirus. The biggest reason why Korea has some roles in anti-measures coronavirus is the national leadership. I have monitored 10 years big outbreak of FMD, foot and mouth disease in Korea. Foot and mouth disease in Korea, 2010 and 2011 outbreak was a big disaster for Korea. Also, in 2015, there was MERS. During that time, the national leaders worked for the secrecy tradition to the anti-diseases. But this government has three specific characters. One is the openness, and the second one is the expert part, and the third one is the technology-based approach. These three factors made Korea has some role in the world in anti-measures to coronavirus.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Kim, please present your paper and summarize it, please.
Okay. The title of my paper is Forecasting the Environmental Change of Technological Innovation System in South Korea in the COVID-19 era. Korean economy has experienced a very rapid growth, largely due to the change of the innovation system since the last half century. The recent outbreak of COVID-19 impacts the global economy as well as Korea's innovation system. In order to understand the influence of the shock to the Korean technological system, we have forecasted the future of the system combining qualitative and quantitative techniques such as technique such as expert panel, cross-impact analysis, and scenario planning. According to the results, we have identified the 39 driving forces influencing the change of Korea's technological innovation system. 4 scenarios have been suggested based on the predetermined factors and core uncertainties. In other words, uncertainties of emergence of the region and global value chain generate 4 scenarios: regional growth, unstable hope, returning to the past, and regional conflicts. The regional growth scenario is regarded as the most preferable, whereas the regional conflicts scenario is unavoidable. In conclusion, we put forward some policy implications to boost the regional innovation system by exploiting the weakened global value chains in order to move on to the most preferable scenario away from the return to the past regime. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Also, the Dr. Im's paper, The Strategic Transformation from Innovation Cluster to Digital Innovation Cluster During and After COVID-19, will be summarized by Professor Mohan.
Good afternoon, everybody. It was interesting to see Dr. Im Dek-soon's paper based on a survey. In summary, some of the findings from the survey include impacts that the COVID-19 had on the digital innovation, from moving from a geographical innovation cluster to a digital innovation cluster. There were also several findings that were presented by Dr. Im in his paper about the differences between findings in Korea and between Korea and other countries. One of the biggest impacts has been on the education part. But the obvious one was the face-to-face communication, the impact from face-to-face communication moving on to non-face-to-face communication. And some other interesting points they have raised is the role of the different actors. In geographical innovation clusters, there was less importance for the role of the internet connectivity players. So there are some new players like these coming into play for a virtual innovation cluster, as a geographical cluster moves to a virtual innovation cluster. Although the virtual innovation cluster was conceptualized quite a few years ago, Dr. Im Dek-soon points out quite a quick change into this kind of a clustering in order to come out with certain innovation. Some of the other interesting findings are the affiliated organizations' technological innovation strategy or independent activities in technological innovation seem to be rather low. But overall, there are some significant differences in the way Korea and the rest of the world seem to be reacting to the COVID-19 factors. And one of the reasons seems to be that the Korean handling of the COVID-19 has led to the possibility of certain players in the innovation system to continue, unlike in the other parts of the world. Thank you for this opportunity to summarize Dr. Im's paper. I pass it back to Dr. Kim now, the next speaker.
Thank you. Next is the COVID-19 and the Korean economy, when, how, and what changes. Dr. Park, please introduce and summarize the paper.
Hi, everyone. This study examines the macroeconomic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Korean economy with different scenarios for the Korean economy. Based on the 3 scenarios, using the growth rate of 2020 GDP and final expenditure, we forecast the 2021 GDP by industry sector with 2 innovative approaches. The first thing is the flex IO method to updating the base year the IO coefficient matrix to the new target years the IO coefficients And second thing is forecasting approach combined with an IO coefficient matrix as of the so we forecast the future GDP changes. So, and the findings of this study, first thing is the total GDP growth rate under the pessimistic scenarios demonstrate less rebound from the shock than that of base scenarios. And second, agriculture, culture, and tourism-related sectors that are suffering from the severe losses of COVID-19 showed a lower resilience than the other different industries. Third, information and communication technology industry maintains a stable growth trend and is expected to take the leading role for the Korean economy in the post-COVID-19 and the Industry 4.0 eras. So our findings delivers that we added the government expenditures responding the shock and international trade, then our forecasting models, then the result can be more useful and reliable to simulate the resilience from the pandemic. This is the end of our studies.
Thank you, Dr. Park. The last paper is about technological innovation in public education in the era of COVID-19, focusing on distance education policy in South Korea, conducted by Dr. Shin. So can you summarize?
Okay, so let me introduce my study. This study is more relating to educational policy in the era of COVID-19. This study intends to analyze the strategy and policy of distance learning in the public education sector using the experience in Korea. Actually, as you might know, Korea has tried to begin online school after the COVID-19. So, Ministry of Education promote a lot of policy to support this in necessary of the era of COVID-19. Based on the background, these studies analyze document and the policy from Ministry of Education. That means annual plan and the press release, which uploaded from MOE website between April and August. So totally 13 documents was analyzed to my study, and my study is focused on what specific policy have supported distance education in school setting, as well as this study also discussed what specific policy dealing with educational equality and equity issue, which means is a very important educational value of public education. So my study has a research framework based on technological infrastructure and technological teaching and learning. So my finding is dealing with based on the two category and what specific policy should be addressed based on the educational inequality and equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shin. I heard also the National Assembly Futures Institute is also doing research related to this topic. So Drs. Youbean Kim and Sungwon Park connected online. Can you introduce your research?
Okay, thank you, Professor Park, and I'm happy to have a chance to introduce our research about the social changes after the pandemic, including COVID-19. At first, this research is overall managed by Dr. Songwon Park, And I think it is helpful to understand the results if you know why this kind of research came to be conducted. Could I ask the answer for this, Dr. Park?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sungwon Park from NAPI, National Assembly Futures Institute. Actually, I and Dr. Kim observed the pandemic disease last February, actually right after COVID-19 outbreak. At that time, we were looking for academic evidence or issues which dealt with social change after pandemic disease, but we couldn't. So we changed the strategy for identifying social issues after pandemic disease, which is we look for academic evidence from SARS, which was in 2002. So we had experienced four kinds of pandemic disease: SARS, H1N1, and MERS, and then COVID-19. So we searched Scopus TV. So we found numerous articles that dealt with social issues after COVID pandemic disease. So that's why we decided to find some social issues through Scopus TV from 2002 SARS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Dr. Park. Next, I would like to introduce the key result of our research. I studied the social changes after the pandemic, looking at the literature for the last 2 decades, from SARS to COVID-19. In order to discuss the post-corona issue, I tried to find out what issues were discussed in the period of a pandemic infectious disease after the millennium through the data analysis. The papers and literature published in the period of SARS, H1N1 flu, MERS, and the current COVID-19 outbreak were collected and analyzed. In all 4 periods, the mental and emotional issue emerged the most. There are mental health related topics such as stress and trauma. Of course, it includes the stress of medical staff. There were also many words related to fear, such as anxiety and depression, crisis management, public health policy, public safety, and infection control was followed. In addition, content related to public policy and medical policy were also followed. Next, the subject of each document was examined. Topic analysis is a methodology in which an algorithm identifies each document, divides it into several topics, and finds out which words are centered in that topic. The themes related to the resilience appears unusually during SARS. These are contents related to social stigma and recovery for labor market survivors. Social stigma has occurred mainly in medical personnel or in patients diagnosed with infectious disease, especially in hotels, which have been cited as major places of infection. In the case of hotels, there were many cases of changing the signboard after SARS. Anyway, related to this stigma effect, the question of how to recover after the crisis arose. During the H1N1 flu, the issue of social overcoming begins to emerge. Scientific disease overcoming also emerged, and crisis control and social isolation began to be discussed within the framework of social overcoming. Regarding the response system, content such as resource allocation, crisis plan establishment, and guideline preparation appeared. In MERS, social overcoming is a little more prominent. Words such as infectious disease is a social disease and can be overcome sufficiently through cooperation started to emerge. Stories about information communication also begin to appear. Information generated from news and social media was at the center of the discussion. However, in the time of MERS, the information was severely controlled. In the case of Korea, the government controlled the posting of information, such as how many people died on social media. The government responded strongly mentioning the punishment for disseminating false information. As a result, these things rather lower trust in the government, causing anxiety and mass producing rumors. It can be seen as a problem that made it harder to cure social diseases. In COVID-19, there are a lot of talks about the role of international organizations or international cooperation, followed by topics such as crisis management, mental programs, information, and disease treatment. Especially regarding information, it also connects to IT, online education, medical records, medical information emerged as important way of the decision support system. In other words, the importance of information for scientific decision making began to emerge in the corona crisis. Also, let's look at the information issue in relation to the stigma effect. Disclosure of the information of the impacted person is a tremendous violation of individual rights. Therefore, it is necessary to use information as actual decision-making tools rather than being used in a form of as it is now. It means that information should be an important factor in making medical or political policy decisions. Information is also of great value as a direct response to non-face-to-face communication. They play an important role in performing distance education, remote work, and remote medical treatment. At this time, due to the limited capacity of the hospital, there have been programs in which patients who are not corona-related are subject to reverse discrimination. Of course, reliable and transparent information must be premise. Through this analysis, it was found that data can be used as an important means to increase public acceptance of various policies to overcome infectious disease. Okay, this is the wrap up of my research. And finally, Dr. Park, could you explain what issue should be considered in preparation for the pandemic situation?
Okay, thank you. Actually, we wanted to find out two kinds of social issues. The first one is that we wanted to find out recurring social issues, regardless of time. So we thought that this issue needs innovative policy because it is unsolved problem. And the second one is we wanted to find out newly rising changes, social changes. So I'm gonna explain later. These issues need to be discussed in various ways because it is an emerging issue, which cannot determine it is opportunity or threat. So first one, I'm gonna talk about the recurring issues regardless of time. As you know, economic shock The keyword that appeared in all four periods from SARS to COVID-19 is economic shock. It is no wonder that economic activity is shrinking at a time when social meeting and freedom of movement are extremely suppressed. Many companies and shops, including travel agencies, are still suffering economically. In response to the suffering, governments are offering interest rate cuts and financial inputs. Environmental destruction is also a recurring issue. Jones et al., which was published 2008, they revealed that the cause of a newly emerging infectious disease, which are associated with social, economic, environmental, and ecological factors. They reviewed 335 cases of infectious diseases reported worldwide from 1940 to 2004, and they found that 60% were infectious disease derived from animals. Of these, over 71% is an infectious disease that has been transferred from wild animals. So the proportion has been steadily increasing in recent years due to the expansion of urbanization. Another document claimed that deaths from infectious diseases are high in places where environmental pollution is severe. For example, Mexico, which has caused many deaths from H1N1 flu, has been highly associated with high oxidative air pollution, high ozone levels. The role of international organizations are also recurring issues, regardless of time. These keywords relate to international cooperation, such as comparative research by country, case and information collection, and international exchange of crisis management in response to infectious diseases have appeared continuously every time. In particular, it emphasized the role of international organizations in international standards and guidelines for social isolation. And it mentioned the importance of international cooperation in crisis management, such as resource distribution for infectious disease response. If countries that have been experiencing financial difficulties since the COVID-19 crisis has calmed down, which I'm not sure right now, but operate production facilities more severely than before to restore the economy. It can adversely affect environmental destruction or climate change, and it can encourage the emergence of spread of infectious disease with high relevance. In order to create and enforce interstate norms, discussions on the functions and roles of international organizations that are different from before are needed. And also, we found that psychological fear as recurring issues, repeated issue, social issue. Global infectious diseases have a relatively high mortality rate, so they are spreading psychological fear. In particular, the psychological instability of public health workers who have contacted confirmed persons or suspected confirmed persons is reported. After the outbreak of SARS, a Taiwanese researcher interviewed 135 public health workers and found that 17.3% of respondents reported suffering from severe mental distress. Many patients who have also recovered from SARS have been shown to suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome. If you experience this disorder, you will have psychologically unstable and unpleasant feelings that are impossible to live in. Now I want to talk about newly emerging changes, which are need to be discussed in various ways. The first one is that the conflict between public safety and personal freedom. The frequent outbreak of global pandemics has led to the increasing number of cases in which individual freedom or rights for public safety are constrained. In a situation where it is impossible to know where and who the pandemic will start, governments will observe personal information or behavior in the name of constantly monitoring abnormal signs. The so-called daily monitoring system works if the government monitors the behavior of the people in real time. Yes, Big Brother, which has seen in the science fiction movies, may come true. And another emerging issue is biosurveillance. The word biosurveillance is emerging. The National Strategy for Biosurveillance 2013 defines biosurveillance as the process of collecting, integrating, interpreting, and communicating essential information about all factors that threaten the health of humans, animals, and plants, and activities of disease to help better decision making and increase awareness of the overall situation and response stage. In April 2018, maybe 2 years ago, the Ministry of Health and Welfare of Korea announced that it had launched the Infection Control and Prevention Division, Infectious Disease Research and Development Team, a foundation of 7 ministries, including the Ministry of Science and ICT, to study the biological monitoring system, but the specific results were not confirmed. We haven't found the results. And another emerging issue, citizens' online politics. Since the outbreak of SARS in 2002, the Chinese government has been asked by countries around the world to disclose the status of SARS online. The Chinese government initially focused on controlling the SARS coverage from the Guangdong region's media because it feared it would cause social unrest and the political instability. However, as people began using digital media to send information that their friends, family members, symptoms, and treatments were effective, they didn't give confidence to the data released by the Chinese government. The emergence of a citizen journalist, thanks to the development of a spread of social media, shows that information communication is very dynamic in the crisis situation. They have a much stronger influence than existing politicians and opinion leaders. The last one that I want to talk about as the emerging issue, the spread of uncontact communication. We are living a life of non-face-to-face with others. Like nowadays, we talk non-face-to-face via online. Social distances are being implemented to prevent infections and in Corona-19. And business governments encourage telecommuting and video conferences. Professors and students at universities meet online. One of the most important drivers was the change of face-to-face relationships. Korean society was likely to avoid face-to-face encounter. In the near future, future is forecasted, the 5G era will be held in earnest, and if the hologram era arrives, virtual reality will be realized that it seems to meet without actual meeting. This environment will make people think that meeting in person is inefficient, and social distances after Corona-19 are likely to further strengthen this trend of non-face-to-face diffusion. I want to conclude our findings. Through the analysis process, we found that the number of literature dealing with social changes in global infectious disease was not as large as expected. If the active discussion of social impact of infectious diseases is highlighted as a public agenda and policy agenda is made, we hope that similar issues will be prevented from repeating each time an infectious disease occurs. In the situation where unprecedented social changes are expected after COVID-19, it is necessary for academics and professional groups to continuously identify and analyze socio-economic issues in depth and to fulfill their responsibilities so that they can be linked as policy alternatives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Park. So far, we have talked about the major social issues from SARS to COVID-19. Thank you for listening for a long time. I would like to ask the following questions to discuss at this moment. It looks very important new technology in the new normal era, but the new technologies cannot be presented to all people at the same time apart from, but may be tightly connected to the economic and financial damages. If then, how authors and discussants can expect the gaps existing to accept the technologies? For example, online conference and connections cannot be approached to low-income people and may raise serious discrepancies and inequalities. For them, what kind of programs may be expected in each field in terms of SDP, educational policy, economic policy, social policy, etc.?
Why don't you start from, I think it's a good idea to start from the paper order. So, Professor Song, can you first address what kind of issues may be addressed because of this coronavirus in terms of the technological innovations and the gaps? Oh, yeah. I'll start. Okay. So, Professor Park, can you start first? Yeah, regarding the. Yeah, regarding the.
I think technology is not the cause of world inequalities. However, technical advances are often the cause of income equality by raising wages for highly skilled workers or encouraging them to use traditional capital instead of the labor force. Although comfortable recognizing this trend is very important for individuals, governments, and business alike. It's because you need to figure out what kind of land you want, so you can decide to step on it. Fortunately, despite the trend of inequality, it is happening at a slightly different pace from country to country and from society to society. And income equality is not an inevitable problem. So the system is one of the good tools to close the gap between the innate imbalance and the final income imbalance. This distribution has been and will be problem that cannot be completely solved in any society at any time. It is time to look at the course of the advanced countries that have considered the issue of distribution in order to increase economic efficiency of technical progress. So today this conference is very important. So we need to discuss and present about this situation. So I thank you to SP staff. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Another the point may be addressed in terms of the economic aspect. So, Dr. Park, can you address your thoughts regarding the existing gaps stemming from this coronavirus and technological innovation?
Yeah, actually, before this COVID-19 pandemic, due to the technology innovations, then the human factors in economy will actually the labor is transformed to the new machines. So this unemployment rate is already is gradually increased due to the transformation of the economic structures. So it is not the easy way to solve the disparity in low income people. So we have to the economic structures changes, then we have to find together the solutions for help that the low income people. So and the government and the researcher and all the stakeholders and all the peoples have to discuss the solutions to reduce the disparity in income or yes. So that is my opinions.
All right, thank you. Because this is a live streaming, so some of us having some feeling uncomfortable regarding the live streaming, but we are addressing a really interesting point together. So the third person may be Professor Seol. Can you address about the gaps?
Technological gap.
Technological innovation, and which may raise serious problems for example, low-income people. So, what kind of the suggestion you maybe have for in terms of STP aspect?
If we focused on the technological measures to coronavirus, the innovation is not the important method, but the diffusion and distribution may be the first thing we have to consider. Diffusion and distribution is the matter of policy, not the technological innovation policy. So the maybe government will to diffuse and distribute the advanced technologies to the low-income people, maybe the first issue of policy.
Thank you. I think this is also connected to educational aspect. So, Dr. Shin, can you address some points in terms of the inequality and discrepancy for the low-income people related with this innovation and coronavirus?
Okay, so far the government is focused on the economical development, and technology innovation should be just focused on the development and innovation and fastly. But now I think it is time to more thinking about the technology innovation should provide for more the inequality area and in others area. I mean that at least the technology innovation might be a reason for the bigger of inequality issue in terms of in educational area. At least the technological infrastructure that means include digital device and network and online platform. That area is the basic element to provide fair distance education in school setting. So this element might be important to increase educational gap. It is also dealing with equal opportunity. Equal opportunity is a core value for everyone has equal opportunity without any barrier from their income or where they came from. So it is time to more technology sector provide more the interest and the more the support for the student. Student is for future, right? So the educational area should be cooperated with the technological area and cooperation as well as the other public sector. That is my point about that issue.
Thank you. We actually invited three the discussants. So in terms of the educational policy, we also have currently Dr. Jung. So why don't you start from your point regarding the Office of Education, because you are working at the Seoul Office of Education, so it would be great to hear your point.
As you know, we can see much impact of COVID-19 and its resultant changes over all the areas these days. I think education is especially one of the areas it is directly influenced by it. Although there have been steady discussions on the use of the ICT as a discourse upon future education before COVID-19, this unpredictable outbreak of pandemic accelerated the introduction of technology in education and promote extension of this adoption. In order to apply technological innovation into education field successfully, both technological infrastructure and literacy to utilize it should be considered. But if each individual is in a different situation regarding those factors, it causes education gap between learners. So it is necessary to consider various policies regarding the education gaps.
Thank you. Also, it might be, as Dr. Sungwon Park addressed, that psychological problems may be another issue. So, Trine, can you explain or address some points based on the Danish case and others regarding the psychological issues and others? That would be great to understand.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of common points all over the world. I can see now that I live in Korea, when I speak to my colleagues at home, the worries or the attention would be about the same. It is being addressed as social fatigue. Lot of students who are not doing well with the isolation. So we have to consider the personal aspects, the mental health, not only enough devices or fast enough internet, it is also how do you cope with isolation, the uncertainty, families who are not doing well because of unemployment, so many other of these factors, and it's shared around the world these days, I think. I think we hear a focus on innovation and being efficient, and it was mentioned that maybe with holograms, face-to-face meetings would be considered inefficient. So I want to raise the attention both in educational field, but also in all other aspects of society, that face-to-face meetings will still be necessary. We are human beings, we need to connect. And also, recently I read an article that would connect a bit to innovation, actually, that people should be aware that if they don't have these face-to-face meetings, some of the innovation is probably going to be lost. Maybe we don't see the effects right now, but in the long run, the informal meetings where you don't necessarily have an agenda, where you get the ideas And by the way, I have to introduce this person, or, innovation is not something that can always be structured or has to have a certain direction. It's also a spontaneous and creative process. And that is not possible the same way with these virtual meetings. I'm very happy that it's been possible to do this kind of conferences and that we can do online learning so that schools are not just closed, but there are lots of things that you can't compensate completely virtually.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a very important to meet together, but based on the current issue, we also try to be connected via online. That's our issue. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Sungwon Park, do you have any comment regarding this question?
Thank you for letting me share my thoughts on what were discussed. First of all, I want to talk about the issue of education. I want to raise two issues regarding education. The first one is that this big crisis uncover the hidden social issues. Actually, we are proud of nature of ICT. We all are connected with each other. But I read some news article that 10% of students are not allowed to connect online class. So they do not have any electronic device to connect online class. 10% students cannot attend online class. I mean, it is very shameful for us. Somebody said that it is only 10%. No, I want to say that 10% people, students, even younger students, cannot go to school because they didn't have any device. So I think we have to consider this situation. And the second one, luckily yesterday I participated in a very interesting discussion with a 15-year-old middle school boy. He the boy was amazing. He said that he criticized that only school offer regular class, and the teacher said that the schools, fully offer the class, but the high school, the middle school students, the boy said that it is not enough for them, for the students. School life is not only studying something, but also they want to have social activities. They want to meet their friends in order to have social, relations. It is also very important things that the school should offer. But nowadays, they cannot have the chance to have a good relationship with the people. But online, nowadays, I haven't heard about any school offer online tools for for students to have relationships with each other. So I think it is a kind of another crisis for boys and girls at Korea school.
Thank you, Dr. Park. It's really the big issues we may expect from this COVID-19. So I think the Malaysians, the sample will be also good to know. So Dr. Mohan, can you briefly explain what kind of problems may be expected from your field?
Right. Thank you, Professor Park. One of the critical factors that was mentioned by some of the speakers, the educational aspects, which is also linked to technological infrastructure, is something that both India, where I come from, and what Malaysia, where I'm living in, are facing severely. As a personal experience, I'm lucky that I'm in a private university, and 90% of our students are wealthy and have devices and are able to connect. So we are able to run our classes fairly effectively. So the issue of inequality or the issue of inclusion has not faced in my case. But almost 30 to 40% of Malaysian students are apparently struggling to have devices and to connect with the classes, and there's a lot of disruption in education. In the context of India, it's even more severe. Recent studies have shown, especially around human slavery, that living in hostels in India is actually not slavery, but because their homes do not provide facilities, living in hostels by students and for labor is very important to access facilities. And the COVID-19 has created a severe negative impact. So access of infrastructure, access of devices, and lack of facilities at home, particularly in the rural areas. So it was very interesting to hear from the National Assembly Futures Institute, Professor Jung and Professor Park talking about 10% of Korea not having devices. So it is a lot bigger problem in these countries, and the fear of increasing inequalities there. Very glad to hear those issues, and we hope there'll be some solutions from a technology and innovation policy.
Thank you, Professor Mohan. I think this is really interesting because even though we believe that the 10% of students in Korea just experienced, but the other countries are experiencing this the inavailability of the technologies much higher. So I would like to continue. Well, we can discuss more, but I would like to continue our the discussions to. First of all, is there anything so you want to? Well, first, the Dr. Shin first. Can you do that?
Yeah, because while I heard from the Dr. Sungwon Park, and I just would like to share the Korean policy strategy and case. Actually, it is very impressive that after announcing the Ministry of Education begin the new school by online, there are very many areas supported for the providing the at least about the technological infrastructure. So, for example, the corporation like Samsung and LG and provided for the computer or the smartphone for lower income students, and also the data and network like KT and LG. And I heard that unless the data usage while the student use the online platform learning content, so they provide to support for the less of any barrier for students. And also the Ministry of Technology and Information and Ministry of Education, they have collaborated to support the better policy in era of the pandemic disease. So I think it is a very impressive case in the Korea. So I just would like to share. But I know it is time to look at, just because this policy is just based on the document and the announcement. So I know that it is necessary to how those policies are really working well in educational setting. It might be, I guess, there is a little bit, so many gaps between the document and the practice. So I know there's a future studies more investigated about the issue about the status.
Thank you. That's a very specific. Thank you so much. I think Professor Park is also will provide another case. So I think it's a great idea. Yep.
About the changes in university research and education after COVID-19, in my opinion, the most significant change seems to be the revitalization of non-face-to-face education and the research and the search for technical alternatives to support it. The technology for the fourth industrial revolution applied to the educational sector can be collectively called edutech, which will be significantly expected in future. Next, the simultaneous changes in educational content, the educational methods is expected when done to face-to-face education is reinforced. So lectures by professors are recorded and stored. Then simple transfer type subjects will be attracted to the best professors and teachers in country. Oh, my opinion. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We could find many worries in terms of the inequalities, right? So I think now we need to move to discuss about resolution. So how can we reduce this type of gaps, even though we are in this situation? So I'd like to know what kind of your thoughts regarding the reducing this type of gaps. So who can start first? Because this is we found that educational issues are really serious. So is it okay to first start?
For me, okay.
Dr. Shin, yeah.
Yeah, because I always emphasize that education is important and more financing support for public sector in terms of educational area. So I think so far our government is really emphasizing this development and economical development. It means more technologically developed for the country, and I think so far we could not think about our neighborhood in terms of inequality by diversity, and so it is time to think about the inclusion and equity issue and more the supporting for the welfare as well as education. So I think it is important to think more the education, and also why I emphasizing about that, the budget is limited. I think the more the budget needed to support for students, at least they don't have any limitation even at the public schooling in terms of public education. So I'd like to emphasize about the more support and the more the interest to go to the educational area. Thank you.
Yeah, we are currently adding specific cases experience in Korea, but also globally. So, but in terms of the suggestion, the Professor Seol can address it. So please.
I'm a technology policy expert, so I'm not used to the inequality issues. But we have to keep in mind the three trends. First one is the R&D and innovation and the diffusion is the different areas. So diffusion or distribution is the matter of sociological, political, educational methods. So the social issues expert and the political expert should consider these methods. The second one is technological inequality is not just for the technology area. Economic inequality have started from 2000. You can easily find the trend. Economic inequality from since 2010 means is based on the ICT development. ICT technology makes that economic inequality in depth. So please don't think about just the technological inequality. The ICT-based social change then makes economic technological inequality. third factor we have to keep in mind is the trend of aging. The technical methods and technical inequality is the matter of aged people, not the young people. Young people can imitate the technological any skills, but aged people has no ability to learn about the new technology. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Another the important inequality issues are they mentioned by Professor Seol. Thanks so much for that. For example, technological inequality is not an issue in technology, but it's sort of the social problem, education problem, like distribution and diffusion issues. Another important thing is that the aging inequality. So this is not just about the current the era, but this is a really old era, and then currently after experiencing the first industrial revolution era, this is a still ongoing issue we have to observe. But focusing again to the issue how to reduce this type of problems. Who can address the thought?
I want to talk about.
Go ahead.
Me?
Yep. Mohan.
Okay. I want to talk about in view of information and information technology.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about the 2 points. According to unprecedented changes caused by infectious disease, it is necessary to adapt and change to a new paradigm in the field of information and information technology. First of all, it is time to draw a further consensus on the conflict between application of information technology and the social values. It is necessary to discuss how to bring harmony between public safety and personal rights, and what kind of institutional and policy adjustments are needed in preparation for the era of fully unpacked, such as remote work and distance education. For example, according to a related survey, 6.9% of large corporations and 36.8% of small and medium-sized enterprise performed remote work during the social quarantine period. Although the social demand for non-face-to-face is increasing, the social conditions that cannot be applied in practice are still insufficient. And next one is, it is urgent to prepare technical alternatives for the distribution of qualified information. In particular, fake news detection technology using artificial intelligence, which has been actively researched recently, is expected to become a very important social technology. And it is also necessary to improve the technology level in the infrastructures and security fields to ensure efficient and safe non-face-to-face communication. In connection with this, the government recently announced a Korean version of the New Deal policy that focuses on building a digital infrastructure, fostering non-face-to-face industry, and digitalizing SOC as the 3 pillars. In addition, high-quality digital content should be developed more actively. In particular, it is necessary to prepare for changes in the perception of the information market that will face after COVID-19, such as the development of immersive educational contents using new media technologies, such as virtual reality and various online content due to the spread of non-contact leisure culture. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea to hear a global case. So, Professor Mohan, do you have any way or experience to, by the government or the private areas to reduce this type of the inequality problems?
Not just because it's my research interest, but what we've been observing in Malaysia and also in India, the role of non-government organizations or civic society seems to have played a very important role in education, in reducing inequality, or even providing services, both technology or non-technology related. We have started to see how to articulate this because we saw two categories. Number one was during the crisis, immediate response. While the government was doing a good job with policy and also certain financial interventions, ground level support was provided heavily by the non-government organizations and civic society. In fact, in Malaysia and India, even religious organizations played a very critical role. But this is a society of innovation and policy, so we were interested to see non-government organizations in terms of tech infrastructure, potential for innovation. So in future, I'm looking forward to the missing actors or studying missing actors in national innovation systems or even in sectoral innovation systems. Perhaps I'll even collaborate with Professor Seol, who has now started talking about the missing elements of sectoral innovation systems. Over to you, Professor Park.
Thank you. Another the experience may be addressed. So I think it's a great idea if the Trine, if you can add kind of effort to reduce this type of gaps, even in Korea or the Denmark.
Well, I have a fear that I'm sort of going in a different direction. I'll see if I can lead back to a kind of suggestion, but it strikes me while we are talking here about technology, inequality, that one of the big differences between what is occupying people in Denmark, where I come from, and many other European and North American countries, is that a lot of, especially middle-class people, begin to use this crisis to see what makes a meaningful life. What kind of society do we want? And I guess this question is just as actual for you in Korea or in Malaysia or anywhere else. A crisis is a point of transformation, so you can choose to use it to improve your society. And that can be with technology, but it should be at service of the individuals. So how do we use it wisely? And I see a lot of people in Western countries who are like get really tired of running after, working harder, being more effective and efficient all the time, and actually wanting to slow down, going back to more manual things. Things are not really in fashion, it seems, in Korea, but going back to some very fundamental things like growing your own vegetables and this kind of thing, making your own bread. And that's just something I noticed. So I don't know if that will help anything in this discussion. It's just something I'm very aware of how come you are so still occupied with technology as well, and it seems that the human dimension is being put a bit aside. I know the consequences are being mentioned, but and that probably reflects the fact that there's a very big middle class in Denmark, and that is kind of this thinking just takes over the whole thing. So we don't talk so much about the inequality. So maybe I should go back and address this to some of my colleagues back in Denmark and say, hey, what is going on in your end?
Well, that experience is, and the introduction is, I think, really agreeable. So it's good. It's good. Because we don't know whether effectively the kind of the technological innovations can reduce this type of inequality or not, right? Because it's a human sector. So I totally agree on the idea, and we need to more focus on the aspect even. And then this is, I think, in the same line with Professor Sir's opinion. Thank you so much. Who gonna say more about some ideas to reduce this type of inequality, and what kind of the idea to prepare regarding the reaching that resolution? So, Dr. Park?
I think maybe we preparing changes for national innovation system. So technology policy needs to target industry that are collapsing, or industry and physical technology development is related to coronavirus. So in addition to response to positive changes, response to areas experiencing negative trends should also be considered. Another side is, as technological innovation for solving social problem growth, the public procurement system must change accordingly. In social issues, there are more cases where there is no market than where there is a market. So the role of market should be played in public domain. I think so. Last, risk due to delays in changes the official in charge of technical policy. So if the technical approach to national task is impulses and expanded, a big government is expected in the field of science and technology. Maybe big government does not mean that government does everything over the entire process of the policy implementation, but this may happen. There may be tendency for the government to take the initiative from planning to research, selection, and implementation. It is necessary to limit this approach. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you so much. Dr. Park, I think you may address sort of an effort in terms of economic aspect. So do you have any a suggestion or idea? Even though we experience the economical structure change, but you may address sort of what kind of strength point or weakness point and stuff like that. All right. Okay. Yeah.
I just wonder, how do you think the meaning of innovation? So it might be the innovation for technology development, innovation for what, and where the innovation should we go? That means, so might be it is time to think the innovation for like a technological development, or the innovation for decreasing inequality, right? So I think I just wonder, we might have thinking about the value and the ultimate goal. What should the innovation to go out for the people, or what sector, and just the sharing about it.
Yeah. So actually, Dr. Shin asked that what kind of innovations? Innovations for what? So to reduce this type of inequality. So it might be really important question, I think. So starting from the Professor Seol, do you have any thought about innovation for what to reduce the sort of the disparities and others?
Innovation is a living creature, so it goes its own way. If sociological or political, any political area doesn't make any word for the innovation, it goes directly. Innovation itself can't think the sociological or political issue. So society and the nations and the people's representative can handle that election.
Okay, Professor Mohan, do you have an idea regarding the innovation for what? Then it might be a great idea to get the Malaysians' effort to reduce sort of the inequality.
Well, the rhetoric in Malaysia right now is sustainability and shared prosperity. That's the terms they're using. In the business school, we are looking at the role of business organizations. As you may be aware, Malaysia has what are known as government-linked corporations. So their role in innovation for society, and not necessarily only technological innovation or innovation for inequality. So we are also trying to look at that role of business organizations and innovation. I'm now collaborating with a sociologist who has introduced me to a term of reflexivity and innovation, cause and effect kind of thing. So what are the causes of innovation and what are the effects in terms of reducing inequality and so on. So in emerging economies like Malaysia or a slightly less developed economy like India, or rather it's a dichotomous country. On one side there is strong technological and scientific developments, on the other side there is poverty. So we are looking at various actors and as a Society for Innovation and Policy, how can the different actors like business organizations, non-government organizations, research institutes interlink to provide these solutions, innovative solutions. If you look at recent developments in India, there is a term called frugal innovations, innovations that are low cost and that become accessible to the poorer sections of the society. I think frugal innovations will now become very important to address the issue of inequality and also inclusivity.
Right, it's really the important the address. So I really I'm currently thinking that this the approach Professor Mohan mentioned may be connected to the Dr. Shin's the thought in the paper. So can you address, because the innovation, the technological innovation should be available to all the people. No people should be behind the technological innovation. So in that case, the Malaysians, well, not just focusing on efficiency, but we have to think that who can be not behind that the innovation thing. So in the case, we have to consider those the low-income population or the aging people and many other the disabilities and others. So I think this is really, really important. So in the case, perhaps the Dr. Shin's addressed that this issue in her paper. So can you explain the effort to reduce this type of problems or experienced in Korea?
Korea in education area, do you mean?
Well, the education area or others, if you observe that kind of problem.
Well, first of all, it is very valuable to find the solution. There is no right answer. It is time to have a better idea to look at the various aspects. I think that this kind of interdisciplinary opinion discussion is better. I think to find the solution about the inequality issue. In educational area, and I just would like to share the Ministry of Education is supported for the more the educational supplementary resources for low-income students or the rural and the fishing area students, and also the Ministry of the Metropolitan Office of Education of Seoul is supported for the students with the disability for the special student, so more supporting for the device and then the subsidized teacher to help their the learning and the accessibility for their class. So I think it's very hard to find a solution right now, but it is very important to have making solutions. We have making the plan and the vision, and we need to find various aspects to hold together with collective lens.
Agree. Yeah. Regarding that, Dr. Shin's opinion, she mentioned that the Metropolitan Office of Seoul, Metropolitan Education Office of Seoul. So, Dr. Jung, do you have any suggestion regarding this topic?
A majority of policies in the first half of the year usually focused on supporting infrastructure, and it really worked. However, there also has been much concern of the difference of family support or their confidence for mentoring distance learning. Since this difference turned out to widen the education gap, the inequality in this side also have been fully considered in the policy planning. For example, the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education has prepared a customized learning support program to close the education gap. Learning supporters have distance lessons and managing learning schedules, matching by college students and elementary and middle school students who help in learning. Yeah.
Thank you. It's really specific, so helpful to understand the current Korea's effort in terms of the educational aspect. Who gonna explain some more specific cases in terms of the effort to reduce inequalities? You've been Dr. Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any?
I wanna. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna answer for the question about the innovation for. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. I think the important keyword is social technology, as mentioned before. So far, we emphasize the innovation for economic benefits, but I think the social technology is very important. For example, as Dr. Park mentioned, biosurveillance is one of good example for social technology. So a biosurveillance system must be established in honesty that is linked to the process of collecting, integrating, interpreting, and determining information on the elements that become the policy of infectious disease and disease activity. So I think the innovation for social technology, including social safety, will be very important in the future, I think.
Okay, thank you. The Dr. Sungwon Park, do you have any case or examples experienced in Korea regarding this question?
I actually wanted to talk about what Dr. Vangsbo, I pronounced it correctly. Dr. Vangsbo said that she asked that what kind of society you want to live in. I think well, it strikes me in thinking about Dr. Shin raised the question, innovation for what? I think we should think that what kind of the future we should pursue by innovating technology. So I want to say that we want to imagine or create new social values. Actually, we pursued economic growth, but we have to overcome the image of economic growth into what Dr. Mohan said, that sharing prosperity or social solidarity or improving coexistence between human and nature and human and machines. So we should consider why we pursue technology innovation. For what? So I want to suggest social solidarity or coexistence as a kind of good example we have to pursue by technology innovation. Let me go back to the story that the middle school boy raised. So we were, very satisfied with that. We connected all by infrastructure, online infrastructure. But the schoolboy said that it's not enough. They want to study something by online, and also he wanted to have a social relationship by online. So at this point, he wanted to have a kind of social solidarity. So how technology experts realize the boy's dream. So one suggestion that I want to say that is that why don't technology experts meet social activists who want to raise a change, social change? Maybe teachers and technology experts and students may come together and to discuss what kind of problems they have to solve in the era of COVID-19. So technology experts should meet other social activists to improve technology innovation.
Thank you. Actually, to say, Dr. Lim actually sent me a text which is about the education. So if there's a technological innovation and advancement should be reached by education. Well, should be that can include the higher education or the elementary, middle, and high school education, and even the adult education. And we can expand this type of things, like the whole life education, such like that. And I totally agree on that, and that's just the reason why we are thinking the education is very, very important to reduce this type of gap. So I believe that Dr. Shin and Dr. Jung already addressed this kind of the questions and sort of effort experienced in Korea. In terms of the economy, actually to say we are experiencing very different type of trade and the economic structure change after this coronavirus experience. So in the case, what kind of new sector will appear in the future and what we have to prepare. So I think this is a really, really important issue, and the paper actually addressed the kind of my paper written with Dr. Park actually addressed what kind of sectors may be resilient, what kind of sectors may be really dangerous in a very short term, like 2021, based on the current GDP change. So it will give you some ideas regarding the loss of jobs, which sector may be most experienced, which sector would be the resilient to maintain the current status, and therefore the government can understand where we have to spend and invest ours to sectors such like that. So I think this is another way we can also reach out to aging people, and what we have to the more support for them in terms of that inequality problem experienced now, because they are the weakest from the disease. So I think this is another the great issues we have to discuss. Now the time is 5:50. Almost reached the time to end, even though we just discussed everything like this. So I would like to turn our discussions to the floor. So if there's any questions, then I would be happy to receive one or two questions to the floor. Any questions? All right. I know that this is a really, really difficult question. And well, we are not suggesting any conclusions or perfect ideas or perfect policies, but we are sharing our ideas to promote the reduction of the gaps. So this is the current trial why we wrote our papers together. So because we are almost reaching to the time, then I would like to share. Do you have any questions? Discussants and the presenters? No? Do you have any questions? No. Okay. So, yes, please.
We are talking about the future of coronavirus, at the post-coronavirus. But at the moment, there are many people who lost their jobs, who lost their money, who lost their house. So I worry about the investment to the current, investment to the future can be delayed, because we have to help the people who lost everything because of coronavirus.
Thank you. This suggestion and comment addressed by Professor Seol is totally in the same line as we discussed. So thank you so much for that. Professor Mohan, can you address or continue our discussion a little bit? Yep.
First of all, once again, it's such a pleasure and privilege to be with all the scholars, and the Korea Assembly Futures Institute presentation has been very impactful, along with all the other presentations. I have a pleasant role also to quickly make a few summary points. It was interesting to see social issues, macroeconomic issues, sectoral innovation issues, the missing elements, educational aspects, all diverse issues brought together. And the Korea Assembly Futures Institute bringing in even the social issues that will be affected by COVID-19, and the question raised about what should be innovation and how should innovation address social, economic, and other issues, technological innovation or otherwise, I think is an excellent way to end this session and the conference. So my thanks to all the participants. Thank you, ASIP, the Asian Society of Innovation Policy, also for having me. Thanks to technology, I'm able to be there in the beautiful island of Jeju, but from my house. So with these few words, but I'd like to add one sentence which is very interesting. The Danish scholar talking about what should be the purpose of our society. While the richer countries are able to reflect and go to slower ways of life, the poorer countries may have to think slightly differently. Maybe one section of the society could think about the purpose of life. I really liked Dr. Kim's statement about, give me a moment please, I made a note of it. I wanted to end with that. The issue of, not Dr. Kim, Dr. Jung, the issue of social solidarity and coexistence, human nature harmony, all these things will become very, very critical for innovation to address, and the role of different actors. So with these few words, I hand it back to you, Prof.
Thank you. Another moderator, Dr. Youbean Kim, do you have any conclusion remark?
No, I talked enough in my previous statement. I think it was very valuable discussions. Okay, we have many valuable points and good questions from the discussions, and it was a very good time for. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So as you know, we are all experiencing climate change, even climate risk or such like that. We also have this coronavirus problem. So this made us stop everything, and we are experiencing very tragic the season to not meet together and separately existing. But also, we are trying to find the hope and opportunity to be connected differently. So I believe that this session connects us based on that new opportunity. So I hope this session could be valuable to audiences and other participants in this room too. Starting from this session and the papers, I feel a JIP journal may promote another special issue of this type of 5 papers. That would be really great to accommodate the discussion of this coronavirus and the after, not just the future innovation of Korea, but global innovation. That would be a great idea for us to launch a new theme again to the world. I will also try to contact Springer or Edward Elgar to publish a book by editing and collecting our papers. So this is another effort that I may do. Also, I will try to keep updating the progress once it is received by those publishers. I'm now closing this session because we reached almost the time, but please contact me if you have any questions on this session and the papers. Note, all papers, again, are free to download. Further, another email addresses are presented in each paper. So if you have any questions about those 6 papers, then the authors will be happy to respond to you directly. Thanks again for all the participants and audiences, and happy Friday, and hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.